Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Anthony Broom. Chris Ballas not able to make it today, but we got some stuff to get into on the Michigan football and basketball front. We will talk some post-spring top 25 rankings from around the country. Michigan checking in the top 20 in 4 of them that we examined. We will discuss the NBA Combine, which starts on Sunday. Trey Burke with an interesting comment this week. But first, Anthony, I declared it summer. So happy summer. It's official.
You did. And then I went out this morning to take the trash out, and it was about 35 degrees, and I could see my breath. So
You got to push through the weather. We can't just rely on the weather. It's a mentality. It's a mindset.
well, it's a vibe. It's a mindset. When I saw what your schedule was, I completely understand why you flipped the page there. I'm not quite there yet. Still kind of getting, it's late spring, getting stuff together for it to be summer, but it's on the way for me. I think the official start of summer every year is Memorial Day weekend. That's when it will kick off, but you've got a head start on it. And my friend, that means you are living life and living it well. So who am I to judge? Who am I to stop? Who am I to define or put a label on anything?
Well, you can't because it's official. It's been declared, so there's nothing you can do about it either way. It was Tuesday. It was my dad's birthday. We're out to eat, and I'm sitting there with an Oberon with an orange slice in it. I'm pondering it. Then it took me one day to officially declare it. So happy summer to everybody out there. And make sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Like the video if you're excited for summer. If you're excited for Michigan football to come. One of the best parts about summer is that you're just – you get the anticipation and the ramp up for the excitement for the college football season. Head to the Wolverine.com. We got coverage throughout heading into Michigan season, NBA Combine, all these things coming up, transfer portal, NIL. Head to the Wolverine. We got a promo code UM1 for you. That gets you 2 months of premium access for just $1.50 a month. Best deal in America. Anthony, another thing I wanted to run by you before we get into some of these topics is we do have a new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th.
We do.
He's from
the
Chicago.
Midwest, so he's the new Ope.
He's from Chicago. I've seen information come out on his sports fandom. He is a Cubs fan. That was confirmed by ABC News, not a White Sox fan. He went to Villanova, so that's a little okay. Bridges and Brunson and all, Josh Hart, all these guys, and what happened to Michigan in the 2018 national title. Michigan goes there and christens, so to speak, their new building the next year and absolutely runs them out of their own gym, but not as much on the line in that game. But you're from the Midwest. We learn about these other fandoms. Growing up before he went to Villanova, what was he? I mean, I don't know if we'll ever find out, but there's like a slim chance he's a Michigan fan, right?
Given that he's from the Chicago area, I believe, right? Which, first off, surprising that he's not a White Sox fan because men of the cloth are typically fans of, the poor and the destitute. So those poor guys. It's either Michigan or Notre Dame, right? Like slim outside chance of Northwestern,
maybe
outside
Iowa.
chance, Iowa, Ohio State, but typically, like most Chicago-based people, I feel like I've had run-ins with, it's either Michigan or Notre Dame. So, I mean, one would be on brand, the other would make sense, but
Wisconsin.
There's a non-zero chance for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll probably be writing about it if that comes out, but so that's interesting. And big day in the world here. Big day for us on the pod as well. We'll talk some Michigan football starting now with the post-spring rankings that have come out over the last week or so, including On3's Andy Staples. I'll just run them down here. On3's Andy Staples has Michigan number 17. CBS Sports has Michigan 16. USA Today has Michigan at 15. And Joel Klatt, the most optimistic of all of them, Fox Sports analyst who has his own podcast, which does monster numbers. And he ran down all the teams on his post-string top 25 on his pod. He's got Michigan at 12. And so it's kind of similar to what we saw from Michigan in the way too early rankings. Do they matter? Do they not? Not really, but these are some of the people that will be voting in the AP poll. as the season unfolds, and so their voices aren't completely irrelevant because those are notable enough to discuss at different points. So, your thoughts on that? I guess 12 would probably put you just on the outside of the playoff. The other ones, 15, 16, 17, puts you a little further away. But certainly right in the mix. I think a lot of people do believe that Michigan is going to be a solid team this year and take a step forward from what we saw a year ago.
I think I agree with these rankings for the most part, just in terms of being in that range, that 12 to 15. I don't know that there are more than 14 teams, at least on paper, that I think are as good as this Michigan team can be. Now, like you said, being in that range where they're projected, that probably means you're either just sneaking into the playoff or you're on the outside looking in. And that's kind of what I feel like when we've had these discussions about what our expectations for this fall are. That's kind of the range of outcomes that I feel like is most likely for them to just kind of be on the edge of the playoff, just barely miss. Obviously the things they have in their favor this year is the schedule's a little more forgiving, though you do have 2 more road games. You're going to play 6 at home, 6 on the road. The offense, I think, just by virtue of not being last year's offense and having a new coordinator and having a new quarterback to kind of build it around, it's going to be better. We'll see how much better it is. I don't think it would be a surprise if they were much better, but is that going to be good enough for 2 more wins or the 3 more wins that it will take them to be a playoff team? I'm not sure, especially now what we have. There's the Sharon Moore suspension looming. We talked the other day why that might be something that's at least a little bit of a concern early on in the season, especially if you maybe drop that game in week 2 to Oklahoma, which I'm not out here putting in bad energy into the world. Just it's in the range of outcomes. I just feel like with what they have, they're going to be right in the mix there. However, I think you still do likely have a freshman quarterback starting, which comes with its set of lumps here and there, no matter how good he winds up being. The offensive line isn't quite where we think it should be if this team is going to kind of get back to that playoff contention that we had been used to the last few years. And I do think the schedule is tough enough to maybe be on that 3 to 4 win or 3 to 4 loss line by the time the season's over. So, but when it comes to being ranked, anywhere from 12 to, I know Andy Staples is up on screen right now, 17. I think you can make arguments for any of those teams.
It is interesting if you're 12, according to Joel Klatt, and this is always, you know me, my number one complaint about all these rankings is like a lot of people do go off schedule when I don't think that should be the case. If we're going into a season, how good are the teams, right? And then you figure out the schedule later. But if he is truly going on how good he thinks his team could be, and they do have a schedule that, like you said, right, it's challenging. You got 6 road games, but I don't think it's anywhere near as challenging as last season. Now we'll see, right? The season starts. Last year, Indiana, Illinois didn't look like teams coming into the season that were going to, put up, be a big test for Michigan. Yet they were, as the season played out, and those became very good football teams. One of them making the playoff. And now you're seeing people this year say Illinois last year's Indiana. So we'll see. They're not on Michigan's schedule, but we'll see how.
Which is also not to interrupt. That's also kind of crazy, given that last year's we didn't know Indiana last year was going to be what Indiana was. We thought they'd win 3 or 4 games. This Illinois team that's coming back is pretty good. So I don't think it would be a surprise per se, but if you're talking about a non-name brand school to sneak into the playoff,
right?
Certainly, I think they fit the bill there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is true because Indiana last year it was all new. The reason why Illinois is being looked at as a really good team here and appearing on these top 25s is because of what they have coming back, including at quarterback with Luke Altmaier. But yeah, like let's say Michigan's the 12th best team in the country and their schedule's not that bad, then maybe they do get in the college football playoff. I did find it interesting. Joel Klatt's reasoning for his optimism on Michigan. He says this is not a ranking that has anything to do with Bryce Underwood. This is defense. This is Sharon Moore. It's philosophy. And he talked a lot about, why he believes in Michigan. And he did talk about the defense. And he kind of pointed to last season and said, what did the offense do when they beat USC, when they beat Ohio State, when they beat Alabama? And he said, you know what their offense did? Virtually nothing. And, so if the offense takes a step forward, then you're looking at maybe the ability to beat some of these other teams. And really, there were some winnable games on that schedule last year, but there were also some games that they won that they could have lost. USC, Ohio State, you would put right there. He believes that Wink Martindale has figured out the college game. I think that I agree with that. When it comes to the way that defense kind of struggled maybe to find its footing a little bit in the first half of last season, but then really turned the corner late. And one of the turning points, maybe second half, Indiana. But something was brewing there. And then they give up 6 to Northwestern, 10 to Ohio State, and 13 to Alabama in their last 3 games, all victories. And that defense allowed the offense to do virtually nothing other than control the clock late in that Ohio State game, which was huge. And they scored 50 on Northwestern, but they could have won that game, I guess, with just 7 points based on how the defense played. That defense was that good. Now, Anthony, my question to you is, how good will the defense be considering you lose all that top talent, right? They were without Will Johnson at the end of last season. The secondary improved just by nature of other guys stepping up and actually putting guys maybe in some better spots that suit them a little bit better. But you're not going to have the elite defensive tackle play you got last year, and that pretty much won you the Ohio State game. You do have some good transfers you brought in, some guys that are emerging that were already here. Can the defense, they won't have as much pressure on them because the offense will be better, we assume, but can the defense still kind of carry this team if they have to?
I think it can. I think it's going to be a little bit different in that, do you have 2 players at defensive tackle specifically, like last year, that could straight up take over games, take over sequences, change sequences for you? I think Rayshon Benny has some of that in him. Do I think he's going to be a first-round pick like Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant were? No, I don't necessarily. But when you add in a guy like him, who he's one of those classic stories of just a player who's kind of, I won't even say waited in the wings, just you've had elite guys playing ahead of you. I think that he's going to be a huge breakout candidate for this year. We've seen what he's capable of. And then you've got a little more depth there too, where, you might not have 2 guys like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant where you just say, you're playing, you guys are talented enough to wreck this game on your own. This year, I think for Michigan, it's more, I think your defensive line stays potent throughout games because of the rotation that you're able to bring out there, especially at defensive tackle where you can kind of roll them out there like hockey lines, so to speak. So I think that's going to work in there. It's not a 1-to-1 replacement. It's going to have to look different, similarly to, like I've said a few times, how it looked different after Michigan had to replace David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson.
That'd be a hell of a player.
That'd be a hell of a player. That's a 99 overall right there.
Yeah.
So I think their strength comes through the depth of the rotation. Linebacker wise, I thought those guys, turned a corner about 2/3 of the way through the year. Cornerback, that's a position group we've talked about of maybe being a little bit concerned of not having a true bona fide stud number 1. But then again, you might have a couple guys who could fit that bill at some point. So for me, I think the defense has enough to carry him. And a lot of that is, I get that the bowl game was just 1 game, but we've seen essentially what this team and this defense is going to be, without a few of the pieces that they added in that bowl game. And Alabama played all their guys that day. A lot of guys that wound up getting drafted and a couple that wound up getting drafted pretty early. So I am confident in the defense. I think that Wink did figure it out. It seemed like was it the second half of that Oregon game or maybe the second half of that Indiana game, somewhere in that range.
Probably
it seems like a switch kind of flipped for those guys. So I am confident in that. Now, I would have loved to seen last year's defense at full strength with what I think this year's offense is. Then you are probably talking about a playoff team that wins a couple more games, but I think that they are good enough to kind of carry the load while this offense grows and figures stuff out.
Speaking of Alabama playing a lot of their guys, and like you said, a lot of them were draft picks, dug up this stat. 12 of the 29 non-Michigan first-round picks played against Michigan last year. They played against almost half of the other first-round picks, and that just shows you how tough that schedule was. So in Michigan beat a lot of those players because they beat Ohio State and Alabama. They lost to the Oregons of the world and those guys, and they had a couple, but in Texas as well had a couple, but no, I couldn't agree more. Like when you look at this defense, maybe the first half of last season, Wink Martindale had a system which was very similar to what Michigan ran in the past. You had your talent, and they kind of rolled out there, and they weren't a finished product yet, and you had your ups and your downs. But then in the second half of the year, it felt like he figured out how to tailor things to the guys that he did have. Okay, Will Johnson's out. Let's move our nickel Zeke Berry out to corner. Let's put Makari Page even further towards the line of scrimmage at nickel because we have a safety and Wesley Walker we think we can start. And he kind of pieced things together. It's not going to look the same, as you said, not a one-to-one comparison. I think that's a good way to put it. But there are going to be pieces that he's going to be able to fit together that I think will work this year based on, the unique personnel that you have this season. In Wink, I trust, I guess, is how I would describe my confidence in him. And then the offense, like we said, I don't know how exactly, somehow, some way, though, it's just going to be better. It can't be any worse than that if you have better quarterback play, unless, somehow you suffer injury there. But, yeah, I think that this is the range that a lot of people see them at. And, as we know, they were in an even higher range at this point last year, and they didn't meet those expectations. So there's a ton of work to do. All that matters is the work they put in and how they end up performing on Saturdays. But I think when a lot of people objectively look at the roster, the pieces, the coaching staff, they feel like this can be a pretty darn good football team. They just have to go out and show it.
And that's the key, is going out there and showing it and putting the pieces together. And like I said, I think that there's an aspect of last year where you just feel like in general that they sort of weathered the storm and got through what appeared to be maybe the most turbulent time of the Sharon Moore era, just with all the change. And you were just so, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. They just were ill prepared offensively across the board. I think that there was confidence based on guys that they'd seen perform in practices and just running the system they had run. But they were just ill prepared there. And you had a lot of fresh face, a lot of guys on this coaching staff that hadn't coached really at this level before. And I thought wound up doing a pretty darn good job by the time the year was over. So they survived it. It was I think as good a transition year as you can have, especially given what happened in the month of November, where you get Bryce Underwood, you drop a 50 burger from the clouds on Northwestern, you beat Ohio State, you beat Alabama in the bowl game. You sign a pretty darn good recruiting class relative to what they had been the last few years. It's just, now it's critical to just keep the ball rolling. And, no one's going to sit here and say that this is a national title contender. Maybe some people will. Some people could be that confident. I'm not there yet, but I think that they have the ingredients at the very least to take a big step forward and win 9 or 10 games this year.
I agree. So we'll keep monitoring that. I'm sure some more post-spring top 25s will come out, but just thought it was an interesting snapshot of where Michigan is viewed, especially coming off of the public getting to see that spring game 8 days after it actually happened, and people will be able to take that in. Let's talk about Bryce Underwood a little bit, Anthony. He's on the cover of a pretty notable magazine, I believe.
That's
the 2025 Michigan Football Preview magazine by the Wolverine, us. And you can get your copy right now. Do not miss out. It's our annual 160-page glossy magazine. This year will be the 37th year of publication. You can pre-order your copy before June 16th and get free shipping on 3 subscribers. If you're over at thewolverine.com, you're on our message board, you are behind the paywall there, you get an even greater deal. You can go and find that deal, whether you're a subscriber or not, over at bit.ly/UM-show. If you don't remember that, either rewind it or just check the description for this podcast or video. Much easier to do. But pre-order yours before June 16th. We have, as high hopes is the headline there with Bryce Underwood freshman quarterback on the cover. Good looking cover, Anthony. They usually are. This one delivered.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I have to imagine that that you may have just said it. It could be me spacing out for a second, but I can't imagine there have been many true freshmen on the cover before. We've had them on recruiting issues. We've had them here and there, but it feels right. This is the start of a new era. He's kind of the face of that era. And again, I thought last year's football preview cover was maybe my favorite yet. This one is right up there too. They do a great job, and we're putting a magazine to bed right now, and then we're going to move right into production on this. So excited for that. Take advantage of that deal. This is not that I'm not proud of what we do all year long, but when we finally get this physically in our hands sometime in like mid-July, that's one of the best feelings in the world, because it is a lot of work, and it's as comprehensive a look at this football team that anyone's going to put out this year. No disrespect to anyone else. That's just the time and the effort and the manpower that's behind this. So that's my sales pitch. Get yours today.
And you would be correct that he's the first freshman on the cover of the Wolverines Michigan football preview magazine. And in the last quarterbacks that were on it, do you know that fun fact?
Last quarterback. Oh gosh, did we put Chad Henne on there one year?
Well, Chad Henne was on there twice, but it was much more recent. It was Joe Milton and Dylan McCaffrey together on the cover with the tagline "Young Guns," and then Dylan McCaffrey opts out of the season. Of course, we had no clue that was going to happen. And then Joe Milton becomes the starter, but by the end of the year, Cade McNamara was the starter, so maybe he should have been on the cover. But not
you guys went 0-2 that year.
There are some great players that have been on the cover, so it is definitely not a curse. I don't want anyone to go down that road. Get your copy today. Let's talk NBA Combine. Anthony, I found out yesterday I will be there in Chicago.
Congratulations.
So hopefully we'll get to talk to these guys. The birthplace of the Pope, as we talked about earlier on.
The Ope. Yep.
A roundup of some of the big boards, and I know you wrote about this earlier as well. The main guy everyone's looking at right now is the guy who hasn't played a single minute at Michigan, Yaxel Lendeborg, UAB transfer commit. He will be there along with Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden. I'll just run down some of these big boards. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, and it'll give us a look at kind of their stock here. But ESPN, I guess it's actually 7. ESPN has Danny Wolf at 17. No Ceilings has him at 18. The Ringer, 16. Yahoo has him at 23rd. CBS Sports at 20th. Tankathon at 21st. NBADraft.net at 39th. And that was updated April 15. I was very surprised by that. Yaxel Lendeborg, again, a little more intrigue here. People waiting on pins and needles to see exactly where his stock lies. ESPN has him at 26th. No Ceilings has him at 30th. The Ringer, 19th. Yahoo, 30th. CBS Sports, 36th. Tankathon, 26th. And NBADraft.net, 24th. Now, Vlad Golden did not appear in all of those. 4 of them he did not appear in because, No Ceilings goes to only 60. The Ringer only goes to 33. Yahoo goes to 60. CBS Sports goes to 50. But ESPN has him at 68. That is up from, I looked yesterday or the day before, I can't remember which, to see where Vlad Golden was, and he was in the 70s. They're moving him up, and Jonathan Givney from ESPN just went and visited him during one of his pre-draft workouts out in Los Angeles. So whatever he's hearing and whatever feedback Vlad's getting that maybe he or people around him shared seems to be positive. There are 60 picks in the draft, but he's sitting at 68 right now. Tankathon has him at 58. NBADraft.net has him at 60. And then The Athletic did a mock a week ago. This is from Sam Vecini, who's, I think, one of the best draft analysts. He has Danny Wolf, number 15 to the OKC Thunder. Yaxel Lendeborg, number 33 in the second round to the Charlotte Hornets. So I think Michigan fans kind of happy to hear that, second round. And then Vlad Golden, number 58 to the Cleveland Cavs right at towards the end there of the draft. So the stock is what it is now, and I think there'll be some changes next week as they work out in front of these teams. They interview with teams, And as the mock drafters and those in the draft world there get more intel from coaches and more importantly, front offices and everything like that, we'll get maybe a better picture coming out of next week as to where Yaxel lies. And then the other two, just, I think a lot of people just hoping that they get drafted as high as possible.
Yeah, I'll start with Vlad quickly. This combine is going to come and go next week, and there are going to be guys who are in it that aren't happy with where they're at, and they're going to come back to school for NIL packages. And that's going to move him up the board a little bit, I feel like.
That's a good
where
point.
There might be a team that's late in the second round that wants to roster this guy and stash him and see what they could do from there. Both. I was kind of surprised when I did the story from the Ringer earlier today, and you just kind of a cursory look around the internet, and you find full scouting reports on these guys. Lendeborg 19th was, I think, kind of by far. It's relative, when you talk about, some places have him 24th, 26th, but 19 is like firmly in the mix. And again, it's just one guy's opinion. I'm not bemoaning the opinion. I'm not praising the opinion, but I think that I would think he's as polarizing in the league as maybe he is in some of these mock drafts or these big boards. So that's where next week is huge for him. And obviously, we've been talking about striking this weird balance where he's a damn good player and you want him to come to Michigan, but then maybe you're also hoping he slips on a banana peel at the combine in Chicago and has to just kind of maybe ease up a little bit. I'm not hoping for that. I hope he shows out, and at the end of the day, whatever the best opportunity for that young man is, it's hard to root against that. But it's going to be interesting because, like I said, there is a little more of a divide on him. Now, Danny Wolf, I think, watched a little more playoff basketball, at least early this year, because my team was in it. But it just feels like these teams that have these bigs that can shoot and kind of stretch the floor, there aren't many teams who have guys that can step out and guard that. So I think that Wolf, his stock kind of firmly being in that top 20 makes a whole lot of sense. Again, will be a guy that it would be miraculous if he decided to come back, but really it's Lendeborg right now. That's the guy we're keeping an eye on. We'll see what the next 2 weeks hold. And we have 20 days from today is the deadline to make a decision. So Michigan feels good about him. Obviously they wouldn't take the commitment if they didn't. He wouldn't visit if he was strongly considering it. And now we just kind of sit and wait.
We do. I'm reading the Ringer's write up on Danny Wolf, and I think he is polarizing. Their kind of synopsis is an enticing mix of face-up sauciness, playmaking, and size, but athleticism questions loom. That is interesting. Like, he does shoot pretty well, but he was a little hesitant to take some of those in college last year, and then the finishing wasn't all that great for a 7-footer. But there are just elements of his game that are so tantalizing that I think that someone probably takes him in the top 15, 16 picks. I was thinking about this the other day, Anthony. Do you like this comparison of he almost like Kenneth Grant in a way of a lot of people had him second round a month before the draft in that wave of mock drafts. And then as it got closer and they got more intel from teams, it's like, no, Kenneth Grant's going, first round for sure. And then draft night comes and all it takes is one team, the Miami Dolphins. They just take him at 13. It's like, well, we want a D tackle. We really like this guy. And the good things about his game and his ceiling is so high. I think the same could be for Danny Wolf. You see some of these player comparisons here. Maxi Kleber, Hito Turkoglu, who was really fun to watch back in the day for the Orlando Magic. He could be like that, but he's taller than a lot of these guys too. The upside, I think, is going to be intriguing enough for somebody to take.
I think so. And like you said, all it does is take one team. And so often when a guy is drafted, maybe even earlier than some experts think, it's all about what our plan is for this guy, how we see him fitting into our system. And of the players in this draft that we think fit our system, this is why we took X player with the number X overall pick. So without knowing what teams are prioritizing, again, I think we saw a guy at times. There were a couple sequences he had against Derek Queen, who's going to be a lottery pick in this draft, where if you're an NBA team and you watch that, you're like, whoa, this guy has a little more juice to his game than you might think from a guy that is that big and that can do the things that he does. There's also, like you said, the concerns about finishing and the athleticism. He wasn't efficient at all, really, or relatively speaking, in the pick and roll game. There are ups and there are downs to what he brings to the table, but I think from a pure skill set perspective, this league's looking for guys who can do weird things given what their profile is, special things, weird things, athletic things. And I think he's got enough of a package to where someone's going to take him within the top 15, 16 picks, and I think feel pretty comfortable with it.
And I think that him preparing over the last 6 weeks or so for a combine setting and for these workout settings, like he's going to be nailing outside shots on air, right? And then obviously there are scrimmages, but I think it's going to impress a lot of people when you see a guy at that size. I mean, it does to anyone. I couldn't keep my eyes off of Danny Wolf when we got to watch practice before the season, because it's like, how is a guy that big doing what he's doing? And when you walk past him, like he's massive. Then you walk by Vlad and you're like, all right, he's even more massive. And he's, as Vlad has said himself, people ask him, how tall are you really? He says, I'm a legit 7'1", not like some of these other guys that just are listed at 7'1". Vlad could impress, I think, in a setting like this. He may be able to hit some shots, stand still, and then play great defense, I think, in the scrimmages and everything. But I just wish the best for those guys. And Vlad, you're just rooting for him to get drafted. I would just be so happy for him. What a great guy. He was an honor to cover. Anthony, what is the percentage chance that Danny Wolf pulls a stunner and comes back on May 28th?
Oh, man. Am I overstating it if I say like 5%?
I know. I was going to say like 2. So maybe, but I don't know.
I'm optimistic.
I think
I'm the more optimistic of the two of us, is what you're saying.
I think it's just a really hard question. And I think I thought about it before I asked it, and you were put on the spot by me. So.
Yeah, if you had said 2% first, I might have said, I don't know, maybe 1.75. Like, it's tough to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. But he does have that opportunity, just like Yaxel does. But again, I just think Danny Wolf in this setting next week is going to be really good. And he's going to meet with these teams. I mean, Danny Wolf is he sounds like he's 29, not 21. Really, really mature guy, really thoughtful guy who, again, was another honor to watch and cover last year. So we shall see. All eyes on Yaxel and how he performs. And like you said, people want him to be good. They don't want him to be too good right now, though, in the month of May. They want him to be really good next November in Ann Arbor and then, December, January.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not making any predictions. We're just having a conversation here. We're talking ball. We're talking hypotheticals.
It's a pod. We got to, yeah.
Is it outside of the realm of possibility that Yaxel blows up the combine and everyone's like, that guy's a first round pick? And maybe Danny Wolf doesn't shoot the ball very well and isn't as athletic relative to his peers. Is there a scenario in play where maybe the dynamic flip-flops into who we're keeping an eye on? It's possible. I don't know how likely that is, but that could be something to keep an eye on. I'm just spitballing here.
I think less even than just, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's possible because their stock could affect each other, right? They're, similar position and everything. I really hope Danny just kills it at the combine so we don't have to do the whole thing of he should come back again, whatever.
No, because that's my least favorite thing that's my least favorite thing in the world. I know it's not exclusive to Michigan fans, but it's always, see, I told you he shouldn't have left early. He didn't get drafted. He wasn't the number 1 overall pick, so he wasn't ready to go. It just feels like we've heard that for years with Michigan guys, and then they wind up in the league and they do better than anyone could have expected them to. I never thought Jordan Poole was going to be, and not that he's a superstar, but he can drop 30 on a given night for you. Mind you, he's played on some bad teams, but
he'll make sure to get you 30.
Oh, he's going to get there. It might take 40 shot attempts, but he's going to get there. I think Franz has been better in the league than I expected him to be.
He's the main one. He's the example.
Yeah. Duncan Robinson. I mean, who would have thought he would have? And again, he's tapered off a little bit the last few years, but there have been these guys have gone to the NBA when the quote unquote fan opinion was they should stay in school, and then they've signed like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts anyways. So hey, I hope all Michigan guys go blow it up, make as much money as they can. And Michigan's got a pretty good head coach that if they he'll handle the roster. If a guy blows up and leaves for the NBA or doesn't come, they're going to be fine. He'll figure it out. So yeah, go get it, both of you guys.
I know that I know that Yaxel wasn't like, he was the number one player in the portal and is. But if he does go and kill it at the combine and then ends up going to the draft and having a great career, you'd be like, man, what could have been? And you would also say to yourself, man, Dusty May really knows how to choose him as well. Not that pretty much any team with the means wouldn't have liked to have Yaxel Lendeborg, but the fact that Michigan kind of has him, 1 foot, 1 out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of thing. It's either going to be one of those what could have been, or people are going to be really happy to have a guy that'll be in the NBA next year on their team this coming season. But we'll be watching the draft or the combine and then the draft in late June. A guy that was drafted top 10 out of Michigan, number 9 to the Utah Jazz, was Trey Burke back in 2013. And one of the hottest topics off the floor surrounding Michigan basketball over the last several years has been his jersey should be retired. I agree with that. I think you're probably in that same boat, Anthony. He says on Pac-Man Jones's podcast this week, everyone's got a podcast, which we can't talk. We're on one right now. He says that he has heard it will happen. He wasn't supposed to say anything, but he said, I'm sure they won't be mad because I was asked about it. I've heard it'll happen. Bucket list item for me. Now, Trey Burke didn't say when, but the fact that he was informed of this, I think, tells you that it could be soon. A guy that would become the sixth player, to have their jersey up in the rafters. One of them is retired. That's Cazzie Russell's number 33. That cannot be worn by anybody. There are 4 others that are honored, and you can wear them. I would assume his would join that group. It's hard to actually retire number 3. It'd be tough for recruiting. I mean, every kid feels like it's the most popular number. Right now, by the way, Yaxel Lendeborg took his recruit photo shoot number 3, and so did Elliot Cadeau. So if he comes back, there's going to be and now they can pay each other and stuff for that number. They're going to be fighting over it. But the other ones in the rafters, number 22 for Bill Bunton, number 35 for Phil Hubbard, number 41 for the OG out of Flint, Glenn Rice, and number 45 for Rudy Tom Janovich, Rudy T. I think I butchered his last name, but this would be exciting, and I think it'd be a pretty good move by Dusty May, who I assume would have a lot of say in this.
I mean, Dusty May probably showed up in Ann Arbor last year, looked up in the rafters, and was like, "Why is he not up there?" Like he's that type of. He's a basketball junkie, to quote our pal Chris Ballas here. So yeah, it's time. It's way overdue. It's crazy to think it's been 12 years. By the time next spring rolls around, it'll be 13 years since that 2013 team made its run to the national title game. This needs to happen. Like, it's a no-brainer. I don't know what the holdup has been. It's, I don't know if there's any reasoning behind it other than they haven't felt compelled to do it, but it is time. And I didn't realize that the numbers that are mostly retired, what did you say? The only one that cannot be used is what?
It is Cazzie's 33.
Okay. I was surprised those other numbers were still available, but it makes sense. I mean, they're the honorary. So is there something, I don't know, maybe there's something you do with that where you endow the number, you gift the number, it becomes like the number 1 with football, or the number, whatever it is. But it's Trey Burke needs that recognition. I think deserves that recognition, and it's long overdue. And we saw them have a nice celebration a couple years ago for the 10-year anniversary of that team. It was cool to see a lot of those guys back, but from that squad, it's Trey Burke, He was the engine. He was the heart and soul. He had his iconic moment. He had several iconic moments, and it's time to. It's been time to kind of immortalize that guy.
I agree. But it also is interesting. Cassie Russell's jersey was not retired until 1993. All that time later, and then no one else. He was the first, and then no one else had their jersey honored until 2003 to 06. They did one per year over that stretch, and those were decades after those players played. So this would be one of the quicker ones, and people have been calling for it for like 4, 5, 6 years. So that even would have felt early. I think if they do it now, it'd be great timing. But it also, I think people would be hesitant about it for two reasons. One, we heard this from a former member of the University of Michigan Athletic Board that there was kind of this unwritten, unofficial rule that you don't retire, honor a jersey unless the individual graduated from Michigan. Trey did not, only spent 2 years here, was the National Player of the Year. Him and Cassie are the only two in program history to be National Player of the Year. So, I would argue, well, he did enough in that time there to earn it. And the second thing would be, okay, if you go down this road, who else's jersey should be retired or honored? And a lot of people think Gary Grant, Ricky Green, some of the Fab Five members, some others. But, I think Trey Burke is more closer to the guys that are in this group than he is, some of the other guys that didn't. You could argue certainly for Jawan and Weber and Jalen Rose maybe.
Yeah, in the here and now, not to minimize the academic accomplishments or the finishing of school that any of the other guys did, but this is you're going to have some pretty great players probably in the future that are not going to make it through school because NIL is a factor and they're there to play basketball and things like that. Putting that aside, when you're one of two guys, you have these two guys that are National Player of the Year. Those are, if you're gonna use them in the hype videos, if you're gonna use them in the the marketing of these great moments of the past, just put his name in the rafters. Like let's not clutch pearls here. Let's not do that. Trey Burke had the opportunity to go pro after his freshman season. He came back, went pro after a sophomore season, anyways. Let's not take away from the recognition because a guy had a professional opportunity. Like to me, that's silly. That is, but it would be very Michigan to do that as well.
I agree. Cassie, his stats are ridiculous. He averaged 30.8 points per game as a senior. That's ridiculous. But back then you'd have maybe guys scoring a little bit more, but I think Trey's in that category. It sounds like he will be put up in the rafters. That is exciting. Maybe something we ask Dusty May about next time we talk to him. But a lot of Michigan fans, that topic always just goes crazy, like on social media. Michigan fans want to see it, and I think that it looks like it'll happen. So that's going to be our show for today. Happy summer, everybody, as we enter into what has officially been declared summer by some very smart people out there. Make sure to like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. Head to thewolverine.com. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for just $1. And visit the link in the description to either the podcast or the video here. Pre-order your 2025 Michigan Football Preview magazine now before June 16th to get free shipping. If you're a member with us over at thewolverine.com, you have even greater savings that you can check out. Visit that link in the description, and we will see everyone next time.